Push up. Siqale. Siqale xolani. Hello, comrades. I think I'm audible enough. Am I? Okay, sharp. Okay, sharp. No, greetings, comrades. Let's take this opportunity to thank the Red Perspective for inviting us and for making this event possible online in the midst of a pandemic crisis. So basically what I'm going to do, I am not going to take long. We are probably going to take 30 to 45 minutes. And if there are any questions, I will take them and try to respond. What I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to unpack the book, explain a little bit about its contents, the structure, but most importantly, the motive behind. So that is what you are going to do. So I must also be upfront and honest and say I'm not going to divulge anything about the book or too much. I'm just going to lay the basis. The proof of the pudding is in the reading, comrades. So let's not despair. First and foremost, the title of the book is called Socialism, nomuntu, omusha, taking the oath of revolution. So this is a 4-year project that was conceived 4 years back as a result of the challenges that we encountered in our spaces, at school, in our communities, almost in every space that we went to. So the entire project, basically, if there is anything that we need to understand about the socialism in nomuntu, omusha, it is an attempt to provide a comprehensive picture about the nature of the challenges we are facing as young people. And this is because more often than not, we see things in isolation. There is a person who cries foul about bank charges. We see it as an isolated incident. There is a person who cannot get access to university. We see it as an isolated incident. There is a person who suffers from cancer as a result of working so many years in a particular mine. We see it as an isolated case. There are so many people who are dying of diabetes who cannot get medication. So we see it as an isolated problem. So first and foremost, the intention of the book is to make connections, to connect the dots, so to speak, about all the challenges that we encounter, about all the challenges that we face, so that we provide a comprehensive picture of the brutality of the system that we are living under. So that is the first thing, because if we view or understand the problems that we encounter in isolation, what will happen is that you will run from fire into a frying pan. You deal with racism, another issue comes up, you forget about racism, you deal with it in isolation. So if there is anything, the message that we need to take out, or that you can expect out of the book, is that it is a quest for a comprehensive critique of a capitalist society. And that critique will only come about if we are able to connect these disparate things that affect us as individuals. And that is why the book does not start with philosophical doctrines and some far-fetched things. We start with a black woman from Eshowe in KZN who encounters all these challenges. Here is a woman who rushes off to Home Affairs. She lost her ID and she cannot get any service in public and private institutions now without having an ID. Now she must go get an ID, but in the midst of all these things, she is a young black woman. She needs to go to school. She needs to fill up the funding form and be able to get, monies to go to school. Now, at the center of the entire project are the lived experiences of people. So we did not start with philosophical doctrines and said, well, we will think first what people encounter. But what we did is to say, what is it that people encounter? And that which is encountered by people, how does it fare with our supposedly ideological positions? So we did not treat the question of ideology or philosophy as a big container in which we need to enter into and then it affirms us. But what we did is to check the conditions of young people in different spaces, in different sectors, with different aspirations, and said, this is the concrete basis upon which we are going to formulate our philosophical and political postulations. So basically that is the idea. But the other thing which we took into consideration is that the dominant understanding of youth politics is party-centered, meaning we have made it a norm that when people want to participate in any revolutionary activity, they must belong to certain political parties. Yet what we have discovered in the process of the entire project is that there are so many people who are in art, who are professionals, who are doing a whole lot of different things that we can tap into. Okay, let me work out this thing of comments. I hope it's better now. Is it? Is it clear now? Some things are complaining that comments are above my head or below my head. I think it's okay now. Okay, sharp. So basically that is the idea, comrades, is to say there are so many young people who are not politically organized that we need to tap into. So the book taps into the realities of those people to say the system has brutalized so many people to a point where if we fail to organize those young people who are not politically active yet are exploited in our firms, in our companies, then the entire project of revolutionary struggle or generational mission is going to falter. So basically, those are some of the things that we took into consideration to say, this is the idea we want to take forward, this is the idea we want to convey. So, if I were to summarize this first part of the presentation, I would say the entire project is born out of the politics of tragedy. As a result of the things that we encounter either at school, in our workplaces, everywhere, the idea of taking a political and moral responsibility for our own freedom came about. So I know, and there is a paradox to this which I want to explain. The very fact that our livelihoods are guttered, we are from the ghettos and the gutter, and we live from hand to mouth. Those who are working are underpaid, and when they are underpaid, they are highly indebted. The likelihood is that when we undergo a revolutionary process, the status quo won't take it lying down. It will want to win some of us over, young people, because if someone comes across you and they say to you, hey, look, life is too short, dog. This thing of a revolution is going to take time. You need to build your life, you need to have a house, you need to have a car, you need to have everything. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's everything wrong when you are offered such by a person who, in a true sense, is an antithesis of your generational mission. So there is already a possibility that while we are talking about young people, it is not every young people who is going to like, who is going to admire, who is going to commit to the generational mission. So that is what we need to understand. So we are well aware of the entire possibility, and we are prepared to face whatever we face. Even now as we speak, there are people who privately they admire the entire project because it is not an isolated project. It goes hand in hand with many other projects that we are working on with other young people in art, in literature, in music. But they just can't come out openly and say, we are ready to take the bull by its horns and we are ready to nail our colors to the mast of the generational mission, simply because we have sold ourselves to some people. So these are challenges that we are aware of, and we are prepared not to abandon the revolutionary cause, but to possess the ability to explain where necessary, but also bear in mind that we need to achieve freedom by all means necessary. The other aspect of the book which I think is important to talk about is that there are so many professional young black folks who can't get access to the labor market simply because they have to acquire practice numbers. If you're a doctor, you can't just get out of university and go practice. You need some, authority. You need some practice number. You need a confirmation that says, indeed, you are allowed to practice. So there are so many people who can't, and some even have to write board exams. But there is a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to professional councils. They are still white and male-dominated. And so many people have given up. You find someone who has studied pharmacy working at ShopRite simply because they can't get access. So, and when that happens, the entire project of an uneducated youth or a non-skilled youth which cannot be offered opportunities in the labor market falls off. Because here is a process that is a hindrance to young people's access to the labor market. there is gatekeeping. So the question of merit, whether you are capable or not, falls off. Because in the very process, you'll find people who are politically connected, or even white folks, getting access and getting practice numbers way before and well ahead of black young folks. So these are some of the things that we tackle. But the other thing, I'm just touching on different things because I can't get into the entire 2 volumes and explain each and every detail. But the other thing which we have given attention to is that we are led by old people. And those who are young and who claim to be prepared to die for young people, they just want to find their hands in the cookie jar. There is nothing transformative, there is nothing radical, there is nothing revolutionary. So there is nothing that is politically and morally justifiable that they can offer us. So, and if there is anything, a clarion call we are making is that as young, disenfranchised, dehumanized people, we need to organize ourselves. But in organizing ourselves, we need to know our story. We cannot be found mumbling when it comes to certain things. If we question the status quo, we must be prepared to say, this is the alternative we put forth, not as an explanation of ourselves to the status quo, but as an attempt to win over young people for a greater revolutionary cause. So basically that is the entire intention of the project, to say this is where we are, this is how far we can go, and this is a bit of contribution some of us can do in the realm of revolutionary politics. But if we were to be honest again, there are certain things that have to be challenged about our democracy. And I will make just 2 examples. One, in the late 1940s, apartheid was declared a crime against humanity. When there were negotiations for freedom, and there was an arranged settlement of some sort, there is a particular doctrine that could have been used by ANC to write off debts. Why? We are saying this because when we gained freedom, we were told that RDP is not implementable because we don't have funds, and therefore we must ditch it for a project that is going to be implementable in a sense of gear. But the fact of the matter is that there is a particular international doctrine which we explain more in the book. You will see probably in the 3rd and 4th chapter, which is called an odious debt doctrine. It's an international doctrine, it's an international law doctrine. Basically what it says, it states that any country that incurred debts under an undemocratic system can appeal to the international community, particularly the UN, so that those debts are written off. Now the question is, if there was a doctrine of odious debt and apartheid was declared a crime against humanity, why did ANC not appear or appeal to the United Nations and say, on the basis of the international law doctrine of odious act, we want these debts to be written off so that we implement our own national development programs? It's there, you can Google it. It explains it very well that any debt that is accumulated under an undemocratic regime, you can use the odious debt doctrine. You go to United Nations and say, look, this is not my debt. We are a new democracy. We don't know. In fact, we are the victims of this debt because hippos and guns were bought to kill us. So we want this debt to be written off. It's there. So perhaps there will be some explanation, but for now, those are some of the limitations that our government in general and the ANC in particular failed to tackle and to take advantage of the opportunities that were available. Because that money, instead of using a significant portion of the GDP to service the debt, you would have used it to push a social expenditure-based program such as the RGP. Honestly speaking. Let's leave the question of the odious debt aside. Let's come to another question. You have asset management companies that were still operative during apartheid and colonialism, by the way, which were in charge of the funds of workers. When we attained freedom, there were so many of such funds which were unclaimed by workers. And by the way, these are workers from even other countries, from Mozambique, Botswana, Lesotho, Swaziland. And what we are talking about is what is now an issue of public concern, that there are so many funds that are dormant. They are referred to as dormant funds. They are there, owned by your asset management companies, your Old Mutual, your Investec. Now here is another contradiction again. You talk about foreign direct investment, but you fail to tap into the available resources in the country. To say, no, Old Mutual, you still have unclaimed funds that we can use one way or the other to spearhead our national development project. In fact, some of these funds have been taken overseas to safe havens. And worst of all, they are taken because these multinational companies belong, to Western European countries and North American countries. They are taken back to those countries to deal with the socio-economic problems that are facing those countries. So these are some of the things that we really need to unravel, to speak about, and to say, the status quo in its neo-colonial form and in its capitalist imperialist form cannot justify itself. In fact, it is actually destroying, not even deferring, it is destroying the future of young people who are supposed to assume the responsibility of creating a new society. So some of the things that we are talking about are things that we know. So that is why in the book we did not rush to speak about, things such as commodity fetishism and the rest. We spoke about things that affect us from day to day, and that when we speak to young people they can identify with. And that should be the basis of our organization, in how we organize ourselves for a greater cause. So the thesis is that we need not speak about young people who are in politics or who are presumably in political parties, who are political activists, but we need to speak to young people who are in art, who are in science, who are professionals, because the system requires every form of competency, whether you're an accountant, an architect, a musician, to affirm itself. So it has no one else besides the people we are talking about and the people who are supposed to be part of a revolutionary project. That is why when firms like KPMG, the accounting firms, are busted for corruption, the victims are always young folks, young professionals who have to fend for themselves thereafter. So the system requires us. It is not automatic. It doesn't engineer itself. So if we can win over young people who are talented, who are competent, and also open up spaces for those people who are said to be not competent, but who are taken from our townships to build mansions in suburbs, and say, look, this is for you, and this is what you need to be part of in order to realize yourself. Because some are dying of mental depression, of mental illnesses, depression, and many other sorts of somatic, psycho, and mental illnesses. So basically, that is the long and short of the entire project. Much will be discovered when someone reads. And the support we got from some people, we just want to acknowledge. As it will be coming out in June, we hope from there on we are going to be engaging. We are going to be having different sessions in different ways. And on our side, we are going to be meeting every young person across the political divide. This is not a project of a particular party. It is a project of young people who are disenfranchised. So we are not going to be fearful to meet anyone across the board, as long as they are going to commit to a project of generational mission, which is centered on justice, our quest for justice and peace. And of course, besides every other thing else, the focus has always been on the queer bodies, lesbians, gays, trans, to say this is also an anti-homophobic project. And this is the culture we need to cultivate. If all of us, because the entire system oppresses us in different ways, we need to organize every oppressed human being in whatever form. Because by the time we prioritize a particular category at the expense of the other, then other people will feel excluded. Rather, we need to organize ourselves in such a way that every oppressed person feels part and parcel of the liberational project, and something that is worth committing to. So basically, that is the entire project. In short, the plea was that I just take 30 to 45 minutes, and my intention was not to go long. The rest you'll get in the text, and then we are going to take it from there. So I think I have tried to summarize and to give the bit of information of what is contained in the 2 volumes. Yeah. So if there are any questions, then I will take questions, and then we close it off. Apparently there are no questions. I don't see questions. There are certainly no questions. So there are certainly no questions. So lastly, the only thing I can say is that we need to know our story. We are not operating in a vacuum. We are operating with people who are not going to be happy about the entire project. Like if I, for one, I were to tell you what we went through, working on the project, you would be shocked and you'd be surprised. And we are still going to thank people who assisted us, because this is the product of donations. We did not have money. And we are not ashamed that we are sending people messages, e-walleting us, sending funds, and sometimes we would cover certain basic things on our own. So it's not an isolated project that is funded by anyone. It's self-funded. There is only one institution that funded it, which we will say it when time comes. But entirely, the project is self-funded, and that is why we are not going to feel ashamed to say what we believe in. That is why we are not going to feel fearful to stake our revolutionary claims. In fact, the very fact that we are living from hand to mouth is an advantage. It's painful, but it's an advantage. But there is no one who's going to call us and say, what are you doing? Or what have you written in the text? Or why are you saying this and that? We are not accountable to anyone. And if we are to achieve our revolutionary mission, we need not be accountable to anyone but to ourselves, and be honest to ourselves, so that we avoid the scourge of bad faith. So that's how the entire project is. The book is coming out this month. We are going to offer discounts for organizations, but we are not a charity, of course, but we understand young people are not working. And by the way, the entire project is not about selling a book. Let's understand it. It's about spreading revolutionary ideas. So we are not worried about making profit or selling it. We are worried or more concerned about spreading revolutionary ideas to young people. And we are going to do it without anyone's permission. I think I am done, comrades. Thank you very much for joining us. And please do like the Facebook page, Red Perspectives. It's where we are going to be relaying some information and taking the entire project forward. Thanks.